Alan, if you even want to expand on that, and then we can literally just show in real time how the system operates.
So the point that I put up there, guys, was this. And you guys, I think there's a couple of others that know on the call that know me as well. But look, I spent 15 years selling cars, and I never left being a salesman in the dealership. Same brand, same location, within the same PMA. So what you talked about there, Bill, and you and I have had this conversation before. And I love this opportunity here. Is my conversation last night with these guys. These guys own like 100 dealerships between them. And I
Mhm.
said, here's what I did, guys. I said, I sold cars for 15 years. I just continued to develop the relationships with consumers. They knew me, they trusted me. It was everything from sales to service and just an all encompassing business relationship for their automotive needs. So more like concierge. And I said, as much as the management tried to recruit me to be a closer, a GSM, a GM, or put me through dealer school, it just made more sense to me to sell cars and make $300,000-400,000 a year,
Yeah.
which I did, right?
Yeah. Um,
Because I was that guy that went, no, screw it. I love working 4.5, 5 days a week. And the relationship that I built stayed not just with them, but their kids, their grandchildren, their friends, their family, and everything else. So AI and a solution like this, if you, and this is where I'm going with it, the guys will look at them and they went, Coop, you don't exist anymore. You're a frigging dinosaur, dude.
mm,
No one, I know millennial is going to work for that sort of amount of time, not just that sort of money. No one wants to be a professional salesperson for life. But if we can take something like AI and all of the data that is available in the dealership that never gets tapped into, because I'm the guy that is the pariah out there that says, why would you buy a lead? Why
yeah.
would you spend money marketing or advertising to anything but your gold miner customers that you've got there, whether it's 10,000 or 40,000 or 100,000 dealers, consumers? And they went, no one wants to do that anymore. I think you've probably got the golden goose here to some point. So that's where I was looking at, Bill.
Yeah, so it's really funny you mentioned that, Coop. And I don't know if you know John Gottschalk used to work for Ford Direct, and
Yep, I know, John.
okay, so John and I were talking yesterday, and it's funny because he said like, think about all those situations where somebody leaves a dealership and they leave their entire book of business behind, and then nobody knows to do it. They're just orphaned customers. And I know I can see like Todd's on the call too. I'm sure he remembers this from the dealer days too. But a lot of times the CRM will just like automatically reassign these customers to people almost arbitrarily, but they don't understand that total customer value component. They don't really take into account that that customer may have bought 4 or 5 cars from the dealership, and I've seen it happen me personally more often than not. Those orphan customers end up with like the brand new people. It's like the last people you really want to have somebody that valuable. But again, it comes down to not knowing where to start. And one of the things that it's a recurring thing as I use this tool more and more every day, I realize that it just gives so many good ways to start building a plan or building a process. And as Barry and I both actually, we kind of just do it habitually now, but throughout that drill down process, essentially, every time it gives you like a suggestion, you can keep making that into bigger and bigger things until you can come up with like a process. So I'm gonna ask the HR agent really quick, just kind of take a little bit of a summary around what we talked about, and just say I like to create a training process around taking a book of business from a salesperson and transition that to another salesperson. How would I go about doing that? Okay. So I'm gonna use this in the
Bill,
most simple way. Yeah.
Bill, can you add to that? Keep what you have there, but I think
Mm,
also what I like about Alan's question is I'd extend it
mm,
further. How can you ensure that the customer stays with the dealership over a lifetime and is done in a way that expands into friends and family? Because I think Alan's question, and I actually, Alan, sent separately to Bill and Michael That's a really interesting perspective that you just gave in terms of the yous of the world, the us's of the world. It's a different generation. It's not a knock on the generation, but how do you ensure that we don't lose that lifetime value?
Yeah, and here's a great two things here that I'll jump in. Bill, I changed that there. So
Hmm.
so I'm the dinosaur, right? I just described it as these guys called me. That and I took it further and I said, look, when I got penciled because an owner didn't like paying me more than what he was paying the GM,
Hmm.
um,
He
that
wasn't paying a quarter million,
yeah,
like the
exactly,
BD agent.
yeah, and he said, I said, I'd leave. And he said, well, you left everything behind. I said, no, bullshit. I said, gold mine existed in those days. I said, I took my customers with me and I spent the time and money to let everybody know my platinum, gold, and silver customers as I rank them. There's titanium as well, but there's also tin, right? But take the core group that you need to communicate to, and I would let them know that I moved 10 miles down the road to the next dealership selling the same brand. I'm a dinosaur because I would do that, as I'll call it, right? Most people don't take their book of business with them because they don't, one, they're not around like this today. My old partner still is 40 years in. He's making $800,000 a year selling cars as a salesman, right? But
Hmm.
he's taken his business with him. Where I would reword what you said there, mate, instead of reassigned to a salesperson, and sorry, I'm getting into the nitty gritty of it here. It'd be reassigned to my top salespeople that, not to a salesperson or a green pea, because isn't that what used to happen? Hey, this guy just left. Here's his customers, call him, and nobody's trained to do it. Give it to a salesperson that's been there for 4 years or more and
Hmm.
watch them just skyrocket. So it's just a process thing that I'm thinking about there. And the other thing that you guys nailed there that to be aware of when talking to these guys, they said, "Hey, again, you're a dinosaur, dude. You're 65. There might be people out there like you, but there's no new people coming in there." And they used the example. They got millennials in there and others, and they said, "Look, these guys are making 150, 200 grand a year." And they try to tell them how they can make more and build this and say, look, and he used the example. He said, I showed one of these guys my lovely $25,000 Rolex. He flashed it up, and the guy looked at it and he said, yeah, the salespeople. They went, yeah, that's great. You got a nice Rolex. Tells you the time. And then he held up his iPhone and said, and my phone tells me the time too. Why do you need a watch on your hand? You're a dinosaur. So there's this whole change in the mentality and the talent pool of people that are selling cars, right? That
What I think
it's
is in what I think is interesting about that, Alan, is you can actually use AI to help kind of break into the mental models. So
Hmm.
you can create personas based on specific age demographics and figure out specific techniques and communication strategies that work. I'm not saying like translate my content into Gen Z speak by any means, but there are ways that it
Skibbity
understands
toilet,
behavioral
Mike.
analysis. But I think there's some interesting, powerful parts of what these systems can do to help to negotiate those differences when you have someone who's, let's say older, speaking to a younger demographic and being like, hey, how do I speak to this? And I'm not trying to pretend to be that demographic, but I want to speak in a way that makes sense. I want to understand what their values are. And similarly, if you have a younger person on a team speaking to someone, 60 years plus, they again should have a different tone of voice for that different market, speaking to them with respect, whether using terms like sir, madam. But there's an interesting persona and behavior that can come from the intelligence of these systems that can help train and influence that.
Yeah, and
yeah,
it actually we can make it work. I
not
can
no
show you.
what
So Coop,
one
I will
hundred.
jump on after the call and I'll give you a specific example I already have that's actually pretty similar to what you're talking about, but it's got the dealership in there and I don't want to put that on just
Yeah,
live.
no, no,
So,
no, that's cool.
but like just letting this run, I just want to just in terms of demonstrating how the system works. So we put that initial prompt in there. And so a lot of times it's going to ask a question. So I think it's important to show that because it's a conversation. You're having a conversation with an expert. So I can say, hey, give me an example before the conversation, but based on this is a very broad thing we're looking at. It's going to want some additional context. So can you provide more context about your dealership's current training practices, customer retention strategies? Are there specific challenges you're facing in this area? So for right now, I'll just say like, let's not worry about that just yet. Please share your thoughts. So again, very conversational. So it's gonna take a second and boom, here we go. So develop a customer-centric sales philosophy. So it's not something I programmed into it. It's something it does automatically, but it's something as a consultant, I deal with this all the time. Like it takes me right back to square zero. Develop a customer-centric sales philosophy. So if we're gonna do this and do it right, we need to first define kind of all those parameters. And so it's going to walk through that list. And so here's your philosophy, create a structured training program, relationship building, sales product knowledge. So, and again, you might be thinking like, well, this is big, right? I understand, but this is building a strategy, and this is something that we need to do. So digital tools, CRM usage, can develop a robust follow-up system, implement a referral program, foster customer-centric culture, utilize data analytics. So each one of these things can be further expanded upon. So it's going to give us an initial structure of all the things that we would need to do. And then it's going to give us a few options. Do we want to develop a mentorship program? Do we want to have a customer journey map? Do we want to create technology integration? Or we can go back up to this and just say, something as simple as let's start with, and then this is where it's going to start to build out that roadmap on how we do that. So, again, this is something where we could probably spend 20 minutes, half an hour going through all this different stuff, but you generally understand the user interface here. You just basically tell like one, and it goes from that. So define your core principles. So this is one of those things as a dealership. This is something you wanted to do. It's like it creates a couple different projects now, but it's all good stuff. It allows you one to build this process properly so that we can now create these sort of dossiers of customers and then once we've done that or been able to define that, then we can figure out a way to transition them on individuals. So such an awesome question. And this is a big thing for a lot of dealerships, and they don't understand how to do that. The value of a tool like this to a dealership is the fact that it's going to help walk you through that process. And I don't know, I mean, again, for Barry and Mike, they swim in different pools from the places we swim Coop and Todd, like, we hear a good idea, we see somebody mention something on a stage, but we may not know the first thing about where to start. And the value of a tool like this is you can put it in the hands of any one person inside of a car dealership, and now it's going to lay out that expert framework for them to build upon.
Yeah,
Does that make
no,
sense?
yeah, no, it makes total sense, mate. I love it. I mean, it's that you need a roadmap. I mean, another comment that I had out there from people, these guys, business is getting tough, and salespeople, they're useless. And I said, oh, really? And I said, well, some of them are, yeah. And I said, well, where did they come from? Well, we recruited them. I said, well, and who trained them? And the guy said, well, I did. And I looked at him, I said, well, there's your problem. And he looked at me and went, what are you saying? I said, well, you trained them, they're useless. Your training didn't work then, right? I mean, they weren't trained by another company. But the penny dropped and he went, you're right. He said, I didn't give them good training. I didn't
Yeah.
have the time. And when he said he trained him, it meant he had people within the dealership that were doing it. So this here is kind of like, if we look at the big world here, the way I look at it, like in my simple Australian uneducated way, is that the internet is the world of knowledge of everything that we've dumped into it, and what we're getting here is everything that has been taken in there, connected, everything that you guys said. This is the culmination of it, to be asking a question of the global wealth knowledge and
Yeah.
pool. You should be getting the most distilled professional answers out of this. So it's a gold mine.